So welcome. My name is Mike Connor, and I'm excited to be with my guest today. Ron, I've known for a number of years now, is going to take us through some of the work that they're doing from an artificial intelligence standpoint. James is working on some, pioneering some work in the low-code, no-code area. And Scott is doing a lot of work in terms of integrating digital ecosystems into insurance organization systems. Our goal here is to really give you actionable insight that will help you basically take back home information and hopefully some connections that can help you accelerate digital transformation in your organization in response to the COVID environment. Today we'll go through a quick overview of kind of where we are from a impact, a state of the market, and how that's impacting operational requirements. We'll do a round robin and share some examples out of what we're hearing and learning from people that are accelerating digital transformation initiatives based on the impetus from COVID. We'll talk through the various emerging techs here, AI, low-code, no-code, and then connecting to digital ecosystems. And then we'll have a round-robin conversation about how to approach making sure that the work we're doing is still centered on the customer. And then we'll talk about how to, some considerations as you look at what your transformation acceleration strategy is, and then some recommendations on how to present a good business case back to the key stakeholders to help move forward on this. So that's what we're going to cover today. We are taking questions from the audience, so there's Q&A available. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can. We will not get to all of them, and some of them we'll probably want to just handle offline via email, so we'll be able to do that as well. This webinar is being recorded, and you can re-access it at any time just by logging back into the same link that you got when you joined this webinar. We'll also share out the presentations. We'll have to do that by email, so we'll give you a link to a Google folder that will have those in it, so we can get those out to you after the webinar is over. Let's jump into this really quickly. I want to make sure we thank our sponsors, Chisel and Force Diagnostics. They've helped sponsor the work that we're doing here, and we're very, very grateful for that. We couldn't be doing this work without them. This is part of our overall Innovation Trailblazer webinar series. You can find more about this up on our website. So we'll treat a number of different topics, and you'll have a chance to hear from other Innovation Trailblazers kind of where they see the future going and what they're doing to help you get there. Check that out on our website. And now what I'd like to do is have our speakers quickly introduce themselves. And so Ron, let's start with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Glozman. I'm the CEO and founder of Chisel AI. We're a platform focused on teaching computers how to read, and I'll talk a little bit about the founding story when we talk a little bit about AI. And what we do is we teach computers how to read and automate a lot of routine, mundane back office work, specifically around policy checking, submission intake, and triage.
Great. And James?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is James Hanley. I'm CEO for Crowd Machine. We are a no-code enterprise application development company, and we're focused on quick wins in complex application environments. Looking forward to talking to you about it later.
Great. And Scott?
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Filer. I'm CEO of Force Diagnostics. We are an underwriting data services company. What we ostensibly do is Sherpa guide insurance customers in need of full underwriting through an array of urgent cares throughout the United States. So the care on demand marketplace, but we're also a data purveyor. I'm excited to share that with you today as well.
Great, thanks. And I'm Mike Connor. I'm CEO and co-founder of Silicon Valley Insurance Accelerator. We've been around about 5 years now. We've done a lot of work in terms of bringing people out to the Silicon Valley for various events. We do consulting and strategic planning programs for companies. And you'll hear more about this later, but we're also launching a community platform for innovators, and I'll talk about that later on. My background in this is I started one of the first computer stores in the United States a very long time ago. I was recruited and went to work for Apple, and yes, I worked for Steve Jobs, but most of my work has been in product management and business development, and basically technical evangelism. So very happy to be here and very honored to be among such a great group of speakers. What I'm going to do first is just walk us through kind of an overview of where we are today in terms of the impact of COVID and how that's playing out in terms of the demand to accelerate operational requirements. And then we'll go into the other conversations that we talked about. So we'll just go ahead and get started here. So bottom line is, and I think most of us kind of have got this pretty well now, but the impact on insurance is much like other enterprises. Obviously, revenue and costs are being impacted. There's disruption in the internal operations as well as value chain. As this recovery period lengthens, we're likely to see some staff implications and layoffs. We could potentially have people that are, impacted by the virus itself. As the capital markets contract a little bit here, access to capital is getting harder for a lot of folks. And then on top of that, for the insurance community, the risk scenarios are continuing to shift as the legislators and regulators discuss how they expect insurance companies to address some of these issues. Our expectation is that we're going to see a lot of litigation around that, so that's going to drag out for a while, but there is a change in the regulatory landscape that's coming. We also expect to see as people look to this to take advantage of it, and or people that are whose businesses have been dramatically hurt, we expect to see a surge in misapplied and fraudulent claims. And we also expect that there'll be some issues around people who are feeling very disappointed that they didn't get what they thought they should be getting from their insurance carrier. So all of those are going to impact us, and all of those are really important reasons for why we need to focus on the operational transformation right now, digital transformation of that. In surveys and in talking to senior execs across the insurance spectrum, here's the concerns, right? Financial is the first one, recession, the next one, productivity, consumer confidence, and ultimately supply chain. And again, all of those are good reasons to focus on accelerating the operational transformation that's going on. In talking to a number of different carriers, technology vendors, startups, and so on, I've kind of pieced together a roadmap for kind of where people's thinking and actions are going. And obviously, when we first started, it was employee safety was the major concern. The next one was in this now, in this world where we're doing social distancing and everyone's remote working, how do we address customer needs? Then there's a shift to really say, okay, what can we do to better align our operations, even physically, if not digitally, to start with? And then now we're in the discussion about digital acceleration. And I think that's where most of the industry is right now, looking at, what can we do to accelerate the initiatives that we've got underway so that we can work in the new normal that's coming. Now we're also starting to see a movement of people to starting to develop new normal scenarios. What is the new normal going to look like? What's the recovery period going to look like? And what can we do to make sure we can navigate successfully through that? And then from there, it's moving into what a new normal operation is going to look like. And then from there, the next discussion is, all right, what are the opportunities to reignite growth or to take on new growth as we look at what the new normal is and the opportunities and challenges that presents. So that's kind of a roadmap that I'm kind of pieced together from discussions I've been having with folks. The net of that all is that across the board, not only in our industry, but others, basically people are doubling down on digital transformation and related innovation initiatives. As again, piecing together conversations that I've had with folks, the recovery scenarios are, a V, which is like in and out quickly, a U, a little bit longer, L, much longer, and W, which I think is probably most likely, is kind of a series of ups and downs as we bump our way back to, a functioning society and a functioning economy. As you look at those different scenarios, what people are doing is trying to understand how those will impact them from, and I won't go through the list here, but from a number of different factors. So how are they going to impact how we are going to be challenged, what the opportunities are, and how we address the different operational sides of our organization and our business. And then, what will our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats be in each of those, and then what actions do we need to prioritize now, midterm, and then later. So that's a rough overview of kind of what people are thinking about. I'm sure there's a lot more in-depth things than that. And then the last one I'll talk about is really kind of the, where are the emerging opportunities. So anytime there's pain out there, anytime we've got frustration or challenges in communication because we're not digitally enabled, people are looking at how do I basically take advantage of that by bringing new products and new capabilities to the marketplace. And so our expectation is that it will be the insurtechs that move on that first, some of the technology vendors second, the big technology vendors next, and then also we expect to see in the non-admitted categories as well as MGAs really looking at where they can go after some of those emerging opportunities. Again, all of that sets the framework for, where do we need to focus our operational transformation. So that's kind of a quick overview. I hope that was quick. But what I'd now like to do is just kind of go around and talk about, just your personal experience, gentlemen, from, what you're hearing, learning, or sensing from the customers that you're talking to about where they're doubling down on operational acceleration. So James, let's start with you.
Great. Thanks very much, Mike. Yeah, so I think we've been working with companies like Zurich Financial, Farmers, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and as I intimated at the beginning, really focused in on, rather than complex systems, which we have built in the past, we built full CRM systems, et cetera, but what we've been doing is focusing in on quick wins, which typically means how do we take a legacy set of data or a legacy system, integrate effectively with it, and enable the client, all of you, to accelerate what you're doing from a business process standpoint, make it easier for people to do the work that they need to do on a day-to-day basis, and return money on the investment as quickly as possible. So examples would be integrating IT monitoring using Splunk and ServiceNow with responses from the marketing environment so that you're correlating for IT the performance and response times, and for the line of business exactly what's happening in response to the marketing initiatives that they take. We did a claims processing enhancement app that linked back to an old green screen system through an automated integration process that's inherent in the platform, and ultimately enabled them to analyze what type of claim they were processing, analyze the availability of claims processors along with their expertise, distribute those claims, have them be processed, and then push the results back into a green screen environment. So those are a couple of examples of what we would consider quick wins. Typically, I think in this environment, I actually wrote a blog on this a while back, that it does sort of reorder the type of priorities that all businesses had previously. We're now in a position where there's some immediate responses that need to be taken on, and quick wins have greater value, both from a budget standpoint, because budgets are becoming increasingly uncertain, but even more important from a time and investment and return on investment standpoint. So that notion of spending a month to 3 months, creating a new app, linking it back to traditional systems, improving business process and workflow, and facilitating remote work where necessary, and in particular, facilitating more interaction with clients. You know, the ability to service clients while they're sequestered or they are now remote is equally important. So, Mike, I'll turn over back to you. Hopefully that gives everyone an indication as to where we've been focused.
Thank you. And I want to move next to Scott.
Yeah, we're more the pointy end of the stick. So in terms of lab captures and conducting fluid testing for underwriting, a number of vendors are attempting to create systems that allow the consumer to test themselves at home. We're not necessarily in that space. Our system accommodates it, but that's not an area that we're experts in by any stretch. But there still remain the fundamental challenges that existed before, which are custody of samples and accuracy, plus the cost. So there's a lot of expense in conducting these tests in a virtual manner. But yeah, no, there's certainly saliva products that are coming out. There are a number of methods for getting to the underwriting, but really it's the underwriters themselves that are dictating what data is of value and not. And as you know, I mean, while we're in an environment where the industry is really scrambling to accelerate a number of its legacy systems, there's a real reluctance to move very quickly on new biomedical data to substantiate underwriting and risk profiles.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And Ron?
So I think that's a very interesting topic, and you talked a little bit about this on one of your previous slides about the sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how you see it and where we are in the evolution. And I have 3 quotes here in front of me from Marsh McLennan, Aon, and Willis Towers Watson on some of the most recent earning calls and reports to investors. And they talk about all of them are experiencing increased impact from lawsuits, setting aside contingent liabilities and loss contingencies arising from E&O, breach of fiduciary duty, or other claims against them and their partners related to pandemic coverage, for example. And so one of the ways that we have seen the industry really, accelerate is thinking about how they are doing policy checking and how they're delivering on that customer certainty aspect. So having said that, I think we're seeing a lot of acceleration. The other thing that by doing these things it's really delivering on is it's freeing up really valuable time for the employees to really spend on focusing on delivering bespoke experiences, because policy check today has been a very routine, mundane sort of work that they're doing, and that time could be better leveraged. And so it's allowing them to accelerate their business, gain time back in their workday, and deliver on that contract and customer certainty.
Very cool.
All right. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. All right, I'm back. All right, good deal. Thank you guys very much for that input. Appreciate it. Sorry, I was taking care of some technical issues. All right, so let's move, Ron, to you. Basically what we want to do next is kind of talk about the role of AI and machine learning in helping move these innovation or these transformation programs forward. I guess, I'll start off with saying, given some of the things that I've heard about artificial intelligence and machine learning initiatives, it was kind of a surprise to me to see that we could actually use these technologies to accelerate things. So if you could share with us how that works, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I think I'll start with, before I even jump into the slides, I'll tell you the founding story, because I think it really talks about acceleration. And so I started working on the initial idea for the company and the AI about 6 years ago when I was a student studying computer science and business. And if you put yourself back in your shoes as a student, you may or may not have gone to class as often as you should have, and you may or may not have opened up the textbook as often as you should have. And so when exam season rolls around, you end up with a cramming period where you have to read 1,000 pages to take a 10 or 20-page exam. And so I may or may not have been in that position. I'll plead the fifth. And I said to myself, what if I could teach a computer how to read and summarize large amounts of information so I could study more efficiently? What I want is a one-page summary per chapter in my textbook. And being a computer science student, it seemed feasible and a lot more interesting than reading the textbook. And so I spent the next semester working on it, and it ended up being one of the most successful apps of all time, according to Google. 33 countries, 44 of the top Ivy League school in the world, Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Russia, China, India, Brazil, you name it. And so that's one example of how AI can help you accelerate. So let me now jump into what we do today and how you can actually use this in your businesses to help leverage artificial intelligence.
Great.
And so
Thank you.
here is what we see, and this is coming from Celent. 67% of large insurers today have indicated that cost reduction and process improvement have become a really, really important factor in light of COVID-19. And this is fresh off the press, April 2020. And so it's top of mind for everybody. And there's a couple of ways that AI and machine learning specifically can help you deliver on that. And it really comes down to really manual paper-driven processes that just haven't adapted well to virtualization and work from home. I can think of a couple distinct things that today involve somebody printing something, potentially signing it, carrying it over and filing it in a filing cabinet. That's not possible anymore. And so with digitization and standardization, and AI can play a role in that. Business continuity plans have obviously been put to the test. Traditional workflows aren't working as well as they have. And really, it comes down to using data at scale. One company or one study recently found that only 20% of companies around the world are today using AI. And that means that a lot of people still are in the infancy of figuring out how they can leverage this. And so on the left-hand side, you can see a list of this. Mike mentioned you'll have a copy, so I won't belabor all of the points, but we've seen that 75% of commercial insurance line insurers are moving forward with investments, and 95% of personal lines are moving forward with investments. So it's very clear that people understand the change is coming. I love to talk about this because we see AI as the ability to free trapped data and then use that data to become more data-driven and more efficient in your processes. And so what that means is machine learning, specifically natural language processing, which is the area I'm most familiar with, is the practice of teaching computers how to read. That means emails, PDFs, Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, anything that is text and basically appears on a screen, you can teach a computer how to read. You can then leverage that to do many things. Claim intake, for example, great use case of AI and automation. You can do submission intake. You can, of course, do things like coverage suggestion, sort of like Amazon. What do other people like you buy? What do other companies in this business profile need? AI can help you do all of that. And so you should think of AI as the key to efficiency and growth. It's not about replacing people. It's about working hand in hand with them. You should think about them as your partner in crime, although in this case it's not crime. It's more like partner in good. You should see it as a way to reduce the burden on your underwriting teams, a way to improve productivity. As I mentioned, one study that we've seen says that 40% of the average underwriter's time is spent doing data entry. Imagine if you could free up that time and give it back to them. That's the improvement in productivity that you're looking for. Accelerate the ability to quote to bind. Today, it's a very cumbersome process. It's a great use case for artificial intelligence. But then, of course, is the flip side. Our customers are what we stand by. And, we need to make sure we're delivering to them contract certainty. We're responsive to them. Today, unfortunately, customers only get responses to submissions about 60% of the time. That's very unfortunate. And it means that brokers are left waiting there and the customer is waiting and waiting. And at the end of the day, Zurich or Great American never got back to them. It's not a good look. And so we want to help you reduce that. And then finally, it's the ability to fast track growth. We've seen, some studies show that you can double your business without adding headcount. And again, it's not about reducing headcount. It's just about working in unison, hand by hand, or hand in hand together. I think, now is really the time. I was very fortunate to go to China about 3 years ago to the World Economic Forum. And one of the main messages that they talked about there was that 95% of insurance CEOs know that change is coming, and 87% of them are going to take charge under their current leadership. They're not waiting for the next person. They know they need to do it now or they're going to be behind. And so you should invest in technologies like AI, RPA, cybersecurity, platforms, all of these great things that you're going to hear about today. And really a well-designed digitization program can reduce costs by 65 to 90%, according to a study from Harvard Business Review. So to get really practical, how do you get started with AI? There's 7 steps. You got to secure leadership buy-in. We talk a lot about innovation for the sake of innovation, or the innovation theater. We believe that without a strong business case, it's not going to go far. So you need to make sure you have a strong business case and leadership buy-in. Communication is always key to any partnership, especially when you're David and Goliath. You need to make sure you're communicating on good levels. Identify solutions before you try to engineer something. Deliver a proof of value. So proof of concept is something we like to do very, very fast. And finally, foster the right partnership. It's about working hand in hand. There's going to be ups and downs on the journey, but the end result will certainly be worth it. So with AI, you can basically take things that used to take hours and days and do them in minutes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you just to comment a little bit, because one of the challenges with AI has always been the data. So making sure that the data is prepped, because I think in many cases the data that we start out with likely wasn't designed to do the things we now want to do with it. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one statistic shows that, and we saw it earlier, although it was phrased differently, 80% of data today is trapped in data lakes or silos, which means it's just sitting in a database and it's not accessible. Somebody has to go in, pull that file, read it, and extract the data points you need. And the 20% that is extracted, to your point, Mike, is typically only a subset of the data you're going to need. And so AI has the ability to typically read hundreds of times or tens of times more data points than a human, and allow you to save all of that into some type of data mart or analytic systems to then make data-driven decisions further down the line.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're going to move now to James. So James, if you could go ahead and share. Thanks, Ron.
No worries.
Am I up?
You're up.
Oh, good, great. Okay, well, again, James Hanley with Crowd Machine, and you should be able to scroll through these. Yeah, so let me start off by just saying, I've got a background in big company, small company, and before I came to Crowd Machine, I worked for a couple of fairly large companies. One was DXC, the other one was Accenture, and one of the biggest challenges, as you can imagine, with outsourced environments, and the organizations we were looking at for transition and transformation were 5,000 plus, is effecting those transitions and transformations while modernizing. It's a big enough challenge to move functionality to the cloud. It's nearly impossible, or was nearly impossible, for a large outsourced company, like a Farmers or a Zurich or others to modernize their environments while they move to cloud and create more access to data. So tangential to what Ron talked about, the ability to access data in a more agile, more effective way and improve business process was extraordinarily difficult. When I came to Crowd Machine, what struck me was a couple of things. Number one, everything was focused on the enterprise. So basically the same type of space that I've been working on for the previous 6 years in those large system integrator and outsourcing companies. Two, everything that's done is no code. So it eliminates one of the primary issues that everybody has, which is trying to leverage scarce talent in the marketplace to effect transformation. So in a true no-code environment, such as the one that we've been working with, you don't need a computer science degree, and it opens up the opportunity to create agile new applications that are a transition point for traditional apps or legacy apps without leveraging the most expensive resource in the marketplace. And in fact,
James, I was going to just quickly ask you, so who would the typical user be? Is that a business analyst? Is that I would imagine you have to have some level of understanding logic and other stuff. So if you could just share a little bit of that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically what we see, you actually hit it, what are people that have been doing traditional business analysis, so the business analysts of the world, the people that are spreadsheet gurus, that have been assimilating a bunch of information in the midst of a manual process, people that are related to IT, but sort of tangentially with performing manual analysis, things like that, that really get sort of turned on by this notion of, going onto an academy, spending 3 weeks learning how to use a no-code environment, and then being able to write apps. Good question. So that's the second sort of aspect, was the ability to leverage a different crowd, if you will, and third was changing the way that applications are developed to accelerate the process. So the traditional process spends a lot of time on the front end, writing specifications and running them around a broad organization to see how well they fit with everyone's requirements, trying to match as best they can, and then off the programmers go, they go code for 3 to 6 months, come back, and you do a compare. What a no-code platform enables you to do is to gather a high-level set of specifications and create an app within a couple of weeks and run it out as a proof of concept to the organization, let people make comments and iterate either overnight or over the next 2 or 3 days, or even in some cases while you're online. And that acceleration of process while de-risking the project and matching the outcome on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis with expectations is super powerful.
And just another quick question: is there a team associated with? So I'm thinking very much user experience side of things. So my guess is you still need kind of a team to do this work, right? Particularly if it's going to be more customer facing.
Yeah, typically there's 1 or 2 people that are doing the application development, and obviously the smaller the group, the better, who's representing the business side to design the app and the interface and specify where data is going to come from. Oftentimes we begin with the business line side of our clients, and then when we need to do these integrations, we'll go to IT and talk to them about, okay, give us an integration point. We use like REST or SOAP or XML as automated integration methodologies. So fairly straightforward in terms of the methodology. Sometimes we have to do a little bit of tweaking where the interactions with legacy data are proprietary, but for the most part, we can use standardized methodologies. And but we nevertheless have to partner with the IT group, even when the line of business is leading the application development, in order to make sure that we comply with all their security standards and access standards while integrating with the proper data sets and filtering where necessary. So that's kind of the process that we go through.
Thanks.
So here's a look at some of the market challenges that we were trying to address. I'll sort of finish off the story as saying what I found was that this no-code enterprise app delivery methodology solved fairly directly a bunch of the issues that we had in working with large insurance and health services companies worldwide while I was with larger system integrator companies. And as I mentioned earlier on, we're really focused on doing integrations, creating a bridge to a new Agile app, and getting quick wins. And I think that's very consistent with the dynamic in the marketplace, as some of you described earlier. So acceleration requirements, and many of these are met if you're working with a sophisticated no-code platform, extracting data, transforming core systems, reducing, as I mentioned, reducing project risk is a key aspect of accelerated delivery and the visibility or transparency that you get from a no-code process. So I'm not going to run through all of these, but again, the notion of acceleration for us is key. I will say that there's an interesting sort of point of focus when you're looking at low code, no code. Traditionally, and in fact, often a low code solution is associated with a particular solution set that's been pre-built. And then the notion of low code means that you do have to code under certain circumstances. That's because you've got a pre-built solution, and as you extend beyond that, you end up having to write some code, which to our thinking puts you right back where you started, if you will. Do you get some acceleration in the project? Yes. But once you start working with coding and code builders, you start to put yourself into a more complex solution set. No code is often similar in that it's focused on a primary set of applications or functionality, and you end up being sort of somewhat limited by that. I think what is important when you look at a no-code platform is find one that's ubiquitous, find one that is agnostic with respect to the type of cloud that it can run on, the types of integrations that it can do, and the types of applications that it can build, because you don't know what you're going to need in the future. Again, the markets are changing continuously. Requirements for products are changing. Requirements for interaction with clients are changing rapidly. Requirements for interaction amongst business units is changing rapidly. And the idea is you find a ubiquitous, agnostic platform that can be more powerful in terms of rapidly developing a complex enterprise solution while also integrating fully with downstream or future systems that you may not know you're going to employ today. I'll use this as an example. One of the insurance companies that we worked with had, a broad range of databases. Ron, you'll appreciate this one, that were spread all over the place and very little access. And essentially what we did was write an app that accumulated all the data into a single location, reduced 69 databases into a single application and Oracle Cloud instant or Oracle Cloud-based system, and then presented all of that information simultaneously. This was actually one of the genesis for a solution that enables you to. So again, if you look at the ecosystem, you can use the no-code platform to create an application or a microservice. You might take a Chisel AI functionality, wrap it, bring it into an app, and then use that as one data source and enable it to interact with clients in a very user-friendly way on the front end. You might combine that with a ServiceNow integration and a marketing data type integration. And then what we've been focused on is putting that into a single pane of glass, creating a single user environment that enables people to link these microservices and applications together and make them intelligently aware of each other. So that capability is an extension of the traditional no-code functionality. And I think that idea of eliminating what we call in the systems integrator business swivel chair back and forth between multiple data sources and applications, and getting into a single pane of glass, a single area where you can manage in an automated fashion your intake of data and the way that you interact with it and process it, is another super important gain that in this case created a tremendous amount of productivity and efficiency. We had another client that we worked with that did a study, and they did a study of about 15 applications that they were building. And they looked at them in terms of development on a no-code platform versus development with traditional methodologies and coding. And they found that the costs were about 3 times as high in traditional methodologies, but more importantly, the ROI on a no-code application was 11.55 times the traditional return on investment. And that's, again, tied to the notion of getting in quick, doing integrations that are necessary for an initial win, getting that initial win over 1 to 3 months, so to speak, maybe 3 to 4 months, and then looking at how you want to iterate and integrate with other legacy systems or other apps or other microservices or other AI or other data sets. So that notion is super important and has been super valuable. So this is kind of a funny little thing that we built that represents where we're focused as a company. So we're really focused in the upper left-hand side, and I think this is consistent with the requirements that have been brought on by this COVID situation, and more generally beyond COVID, the recognition that working remotely and having your clients and customers be remote is creating new requirements very rapidly that weren't anticipated or probably were a lower priority previously. So, the notion is really high return on investment, lower cost, and, focus on prioritization. And again, I won't read through the list on the right-hand side, but it gives you an indication that we're really focused on that process that enables you to bring multiple services and applications together, iterate on it in an agile way while bypassing a traditional agile complex development process, and achieving all of these outcomes related to improvements in business process and more visibility into data sets that are so important now in this environment.
Got it. Thank you. I mean, I was going to say it sounds perfect for the environment we're in now, which is a lot of uncertainty and needing to move a lot of things very quickly. So thank you very much for sharing. Okay, Scott, over to you.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike.
I was going to say that, we've been looking at the world of digital ecosystems that are surrounding the customers. And I think there's a huge opportunity for the insurance industry to really tap into them. Ron is going to give us an example of that, and particularly relevant given the COVID period that we're in right now. But you can think of examples where, trying to figure out, if you've had an accident, what auto shops are open or not, how to schedule appointments with them, etc. There, business continuity issues, supply chain issues, where you have to tap into the digital ecosystem surrounding the insureds, and provide some way to mitigate the impact of the situation that we're in for your customers, or to help help them recover from certain issues and so on during this. The ability to tap into services and data that are surrounding them and bring incremental value to the marketplace, I think is going to be critical going forward. And what Scott's going to do is give us a quick example of the work that they're doing, which I think is emblematic of the kinds of things that we can do by tapping into them. So over to you, Scott.
Sure. Thanks for that introduction, Mike. So yeah, because I'm not covering much on the way of artificial intelligence or machine learning. Like I said very early on, we're so much on the applied pointy end of the stick that certainly, let's see, is this what we got? Here we go. Let's see, can everyone see? Great.
Yep, we got
real quick introduction to me. I'm not from the life insurance space at all, but I play in it now. There's a bit of irony here. My background is actually in ambulatory care, so outpatient care market strategy. I've been doing that for the last 20 years. before that, actually, I was a pandemic and national health security expert for the federal government, and helped the governments of Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines prepare for sustained human-to-human transmissibility of H5N1 or avian influenza. This has been a very interesting experience to watch everything we worked for and worked on in the mid-aughts, so 2003 through 2008 or 9, pretty much not being implemented at all. So sad commentary on the implementation challenges that occurred now post time and now with COVID. But there are some interesting applications to what we do with COVID as well, and we can cover a little bit of that as well. Let's see if this will move my slides. It's not advancing. Here we go. So pretty much our company, as I shared before, we are a Sherpa guide, for lack of a better way to describe it, on the surface. Our underwriting data services are intended to essentially guide life insurance customers and empower them to capturing their fluid samples or their clinical data on behalf of the underwriting needed as a proposed insured. We have a system that we've created that connects a life insurance customer with any service that they need, or any type of assessment that they need through a nationwide network of contracted urgent care. So we are leveraging the care on demand marketplace. If you kind of take a step back, some of what's been most interesting that we've run into, RGA this is from the 8 group, both have discussed fraud as a major issue in underwriting policies, especially with underreporting health. It's not uncommon for, say, blood pressure to be sort of fudged in the system. And in fact, RGA, back a couple years ago when they had their fraud conference, really focused on the primary basic 10 core fraud components that they really wanted to address or find technology applications to address. It turns out that just by providing underwriting data services that we do, we actually address 5 of those major aspects of fraud. So our system is a lot like, I'm just going quickly because I don't want to be salesy here. Our system's a lot like OpenTable. So it empowers a customer to identify a location closest to them to go and have their health data captured. And as you know, the urgent care industry is exploding, not so much in Canada, Ron, but definitely in the U.S. I don't know, maybe Loblaws is starting to have a lot more by way of clinics, ambulatory clinics in their portfolio. Urgent care is expanding quite significantly in the U.S. And in fact, that growth has gone all the way up. We have 9,000 nationwide care on demand centers in the U.S. As of this year, or this immediate past year. So, there's a lot more to the data access than solely taking blood samples from people. And in fact, as it relates to machine learning and to basically facilitating lab captures for precision underwriting. In fact, the life insurance industry right now is clamoring for what they are referring to as precision underwriting. There's a growing interest in an ability to not have scattershot samples of people, but have a mix between what the machine learning environment is telling a given underwriter about an applicant, all the way down to doing as many medical examinations as are necessary. In fact, reflecting back on RGA has already said that the insurance industry will never go completely fluidless. Well, if that's true, certainly our raison d'etre will continue. But the bigger play is this idea that if you have say 6,000 urgent cares under contract, and you can schedule that. First of all, you have the single largest contiguous schedulable network of outpatient care in the United States. But more importantly, the urgent care system itself is almost a ghost in the machine, partly because you can receive it in a retail clinical setting. Thus, you don't necessarily have to use your health insurance policy to pay for whatever procedure is done. A good example is I had a flu test down in Texas at a very nice urgent care, just checking it out, and I needed a flu shot. They took my vitals and they did a flu shot. I'll reveal it's not a HIPAA release reveal for all of you, but I am hypertensive. They took my blood pressure. If my blood pressure was above normal, that went into their Epic system, and there it resided forever, never to be accessed by any underwriter, in part because I paid with my own credit card for that retail transaction. Similarly, there are sources of data, for example, retail pharmacy data, that actually can help basically drive that precision underwriting. Here's a really good example. Back to me, hypertensive.
Hey, Scott, I was just going to say, we've got about 10 minutes remaining.
And I'll be quick.
Okay, thanks.
So if you could imagine a health system and a data source or data stream that includes retail pharmacy information, it can inform then what tests are actually needed or necessary for you as a life insurance customer. So the value of machine learning and tapping into, say, the LexisNexuses of the world or Milliman actually is far more robust than even, say, MIB, which is the main source of sort of guidance here in the U.S. on medical information. Even they are saying that there are sources of data from laboratory pathologies that are too obtuse and don't specifically detail any kind of risk for an underwriter. We suggest that actually that then leads to a smart approach to capturing tests on an individual based on those obtuse data points. And boy, we just don't have time to get into all that detail, but suffice it to say, the use of machine learning and precision underwriting that edge effect is going to be much more pronounced over the next 5 years. And we're seeing a big move in the life product space that is desperate for a smarter way of capturing the data. And that's about it.
Great, thank you. All right, so let me grab the screen here. Thanks, Scott. So the net is, I think, the core message and I loved what you guys are doing. I just want to say the core message from my perspective is this is a great example of how reaching out into the digital ecosystem surrounding insureds that are forming out there can really make a difference in our ability to deliver value, particularly in the times we're heading for. I think in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is to say, let's get I think developing customer-centric processes. Actually, I'm going to share my screen here. So let me know when you guys can see it. You guys got it? Okay, good. So I think the key here is that as we go about this work, we have to keep the customer in mind, because what we know is, as we are we're experiencing in this industry the same thing everybody else is, which is a rapid move to digitalization. I don't care whether you're an individual, a small business, a large business, you've got to do that. And the expectation is that the people who provide you services are going to be in sync with that and be able to deliver you, great customer experiences digitally. And so I think the core message I want to give there is, as you're going about this digital augmentation, this is a digital acceleration. This is a great opportunity to take a breath and say, how does this create incremental value? How does this create breakthrough value for the end customer? And are there a few things we could do, if it's not directly in our line of sight, that would give us the ability to do that? So, and I'll just use a very quick example, then we'll move on. I worked for Steve Jobs back when we were launching the Apple II, and we were having a lot of out-of-the-box failures. We fixed that problem. Took us 3 months to repackage it and all that other stuff. One day I see Steve coming down the hall carrying my box that we re-engineered. And I thought, oh, at last I'm going to get a compliment. He threw the box on my desk and he was pissed as all hell. He said, your out-of-the-box experience sucks. I was smart enough to ask him what that means. And he reached into his pocket, he pulls out this beautiful little jewelry box, crystal jewelry box, and puts it on my desk. And he says, when someone opens our product, it should feel like they're unveiling this rare and precious gift. And that's how I want people to experience our product and think about it. And so there was an object lesson in, I was solving a mechanical problem. And what Steve was saying is there's an opportunity for you to excel here. So step into that, right? And my recommendation would be, as you're looking at your customer, at these processes that you're redoing or accelerating, keep that in mind. It's a great lesson in making sure that you're focused on the customer. All right. Next thing we want to do is move to just acceleration considerations. You know, there's a lot of work to get done. So I want to do a quick round robin and just say, you know, what are your recommendations as people are looking at how do you start to sift and sort and establish priorities? How do you go about that? So James, can we start with you? Oh, you're on mute. Hold on. Unmute. Oh, I muted you and unmuted you. All right. You should be good.
There we go. Sounds good. So acceleration considerations?
Yep. Yeah. So as you're putting together a plan of what to do when, because there's a lot of work to do.
I'm going to go back to that little graphical, handwritten, high school level
Yep.
image that I presented in the last slide, which is it's really important to take all of the projects that are available to the business and important and boil them down to those that are going to provide immediate customer impact and immediate impact for the business, and find ways to get them done as quickly as possible. So I think prioritization is, you know, while really obvious, something that is more difficult to do, but will provide tremendous returns. Secondarily, I would say look for ways to bring multiple systems into a single unified environment so that you can accelerate the work that you do once you've enhanced the means by which you do it. I guess those are two, Mike, that I'll finish up with and hand over to the rest of the team.
Great, thanks. And Ron?
Yeah, I think the one that I'd highlight from that list of 7 that I presented is the one that speaks to me is like, don't do innovation just for the sake of innovation. And the easiest way, if you're thinking about how to identify a problem that, you know, I would say start with low-hanging fruit. Even though sometimes it's nice to go right for the big kill, you know, it can take a long time to get there. And I think especially now, you want to demonstrate results early on. And so go for the low-hanging fruit. Start, in our experience, just with things that are basically paper-driven and 100% deterministic. So as long as it does not require any judgment, and you could write a set of rules to basically explain how to do it, that is something you can automate, and that is something you should start with.
Great, thanks. Scott?
If it empowers customers, that's your focus.
Gotcha. All right, thank you guys. All right, and then real quickly, let's just talk about, you know, when you think about preparing an elevator pitch to, you know, make your case, and I think we've talked about a number of these things already, but let's start with you, Ron, on this one. What do you think about when you're making the elevator pitch?
I think we talked a little bit about ROI. I agree. I think a short ROI is very important. I would probably start with that. And I would start with, you know, something that you could get done in 90 days. I would say if it's longer than 90 days, you should cut back scope to fit within a 90-day time slot. And that's probably the longest I would run a POC.
Got it. And James?
Yeah, boy, great, Ron. I agree with you 100%. I think the other aspect is, you know, try and find a way make your elevator pitch in a small elevator. I think that the problem that we all run into is that we have scope creep or client creep in the case of trying to satisfy too many people within the business line. And there's an opportunity, if you really focus in on the right solution, to create a quick win, as everyone else has touched upon, and then iterate from there. You need to start with a powerful platform that enables you to do it, but that's the opportunity, and that should be the objective. And then, wherever you can, try and, again, focus back on return on investment. I think that's a great point. I think there's as Ron said, there's low-hanging fruit in every business, particularly in the financial services sector. And, that's another great aspect that I'll reiterate.
Good, thanks. Scott, any final words?
I can't disagree with anybody here, except, make sure that you've got a really well-defined value proposition, and you really have to find your perfect customer. If you haven't done either of those, it won't matter how good your elevator pitch is.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. All right. So again, I want to thank our speakers. Awesome job. Great insight. Much appreciate sharing this. I know everybody's got busy stuff going on, so I appreciate you making the time. I also want to, again, thank our sponsors, Chisel and Force Diagnostics. Please check out their websites. Please check out James as well. But there's a lot of good information on all of them that could probably help you in this. Additionally, just a quick reminder, this is part of an ongoing series. Check out our event page. You'll find lots of good stuff there that I think can help you move forward during these times, and we'll be doing these every week. So look forward to having you back. Also, a quick reminder, we are putting in place a platform, a community platform and marketplace for digital innovators. It's in beta right now, so if you're willing to put up with a few, or maybe more than a few bugs, and give us a shout, there's information here to allow you to come in and join us there. Much appreciated if you could do that. And lastly, I want to thank the audience. Great to have you. If you've got questions, please shoot them into us. We'd be glad to get back to you later on. As I said, there'll be a recording of this presentation available, and we look forward to having you there. Just a quick blurb, if you check our website out, we're doing one tomorrow on core systems for a boundaryless future, and we're talking about what the shape of next generation core systems will be, and I think that's got a lot of relevance given what we just talked about. So check that out. We'd love to have you join us for that one as well. Again, gentlemen, thank you. Much appreciated. Great to be with you, and that's a wrap.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.